What's happening, guys? Nordic Warrior here. Hope you're all doing well. So yeah, as those of you who saw my last live stream will know, I was planning to go and see Sonic 3 today, since I've got a bunch of days off work and it's been a while since I went to see a movie. And I figured since I reviewed the first two films and I liked them in spite of their flaws, I might as well review this one for completion's sake, since there probably won't be any more after this. The third movie is usually where a series kind of starts to dwindle and starts to go down in quality, and it's usually where a series peaks. So I don't really expect the Sonic franchise to go anywhere beyond this point. So let's not waste any time and let's talk about it. So, guys, in case you can't tell by my voice, I am so tired. It's just so tiresome at this point, and I'm not even going to waste my time properly breaking down this film and finding the best way to articulate and present my criticisms, because unfortunately, this film stands as a perfect example of an issue that I've been talking about for a while. And it's something that, while it doesn't necessarily make me angry or upset or anything like that, it just makes me feel nothing. Nothing whatsoever. And that is the issue of mediocrity. Is it just me, or does it feel like every single modern movie is just the same AI generated thing, reskinned and repurposed to fit whatever popular franchise just happens to be the subject? So the first Sonic movie, I like that movie in spite of its flaws, as you all know. It was a funny, well made, well acted, fast paced, kind of buddy cop type of movie where Sonic himself was the main focus of it. Yeah, you had some human characters who were kind of just there, to be one note joke characters, but for the most part, they didn't really intrude on the film. And a lot of the film was shown from Sonic's perspective. He was the character you identified with, he was the one you associated with, and for the most part, he was the focus of the film. And despite it being basically a wacky comedy for kids, it had plenty of heartwarming moments to help keep the movie grounded, and it had some issues here and there, like some stupid movie references or references to current popular things, things like Fortnite and all that rubbish, as well as a bunch of annoying rap songs and 80s songs that you've heard in a thousand other films. But these are just kind of cringy, stupid things that you have to deal with in modern films. It is what it is. I still like the movie for what it was and gave it a generous 7 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed it. The second movie, as you know, if you saw my review, then you'll know that I had mixed feelings on it. I thought the main aspects of the film, such as the trio getting together, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, was done really well. The action scenes, the special effects, the set pieces, and all that good stuff was fantastic. The rivalry between Sonic and Knuckles, I thought, was really well. They kind of recreated that from the games and went a little bit more in depth with it, and I thought it was really well done. Robotnik was even more unhinged and egomaniacal than the first film, and it was generally just a blast to watch. The problem is that that movie was filled, and I mean absolutely filled, with unnecessary, pointless crap, such as like the annoying ass wedding scene that went on way too long and should have been cut out entirely, all the stupid, cringy dialogue and forced humor that wasn't necessary, human characters that nobody cared about in the first movie. Again, characters like the dumb cop, the fat sister, the idiot minion who makes lattes. These characters didn't need to be in the sequel, and all they served to do was take away screen time from the main cast. One note jokes from the first movie were now running gags in this movie. And believe me, I'll get to that with the third movie in no time at all, because that was an issue. The movie was also quite tonally inconsistent, and in spite of how much fun I had watching it, when the movie showed the things we wanted to see, it just had way too much filler. Believe it or not, however, I was actually cautiously optimistic about Sonic 3, and the reason for this is that despite Hollywood essentially being a cesspit of propaganda and degeneracy, as I've talked about many times before, I believe we're living in a very interesting time period now where things are starting to get a bit weird. That is to say, more and more people are starting to notice things and think about them in a more analytical and philosophical way than they did in the past. And the way that I and a lot of other people my age tend to look at and consume fiction is that we tend to have found a way to take the good with the bad and make the best of a bad situation. And sometimes characters in fiction who are meant to exist as sort of a clever deconstruction of sorts end up becoming organically and ironically iconic. And according to the trailers and the promotional material of Sonic 3, the main focus of the movie was going to be Shadow the Hedgehog. Now, it's kind of a modern trend with movies where if you start in a franchise, every single one of them has got to have like a mid credits or post credit scene where they introduce another popular character from the lore or the franchise that's the main subject of the movie. Like for example, in the first movie they had Tails in the credits, and then in the next movie they had Shadow. Right now, for those of you who don't know, Shadow, as far as I'm concerned, is the absolute epitome of very late 90s and early 2000s edge. I was born in the 90s and I grew up during that era. And there was a time period where these kinds of dark, edgy, vengeful, in some ways corny, yet weirdly relatable characters were starting to become extremely popular in fiction. Think characters like Alex Mercer, Severus Snape, The Punisher, Anakin Skywalker. These are, of course, dark, brooding, emotionally complex, morally ambiguous edgelords that in most cases are introduced as villains or anti-heroes at best, and go on to become pop culture phenomenons. For me, Shadow the Hedgehog is the perfect example of that, and he's a character who basically sums up and represents an entire generation. For me, he's a character who I find relatable and understandable, and I'm not gonna lie, the idea of a movie being about Shadow, even if he was the villain and essentially the antagonist of the whole thing, was enticing to me. And against my better judgment, I took the bait and went to see it. And boy, do I regret it. Guys, this movie was something. It was a movie. Where do I even start? So it's like half the team writing this film were like, you know what, guys? We're going to make a great film. It's going to be awesome. We're going to introduce Shadow. He's going to go on a rampage. He's going to have this uncontrolled, untamed, elemental power, this pent up rage and anger that's been stirring in him for decades. And he's going to have this torturous past that we're going to reveal to the viewer one step at a time that perfectly sums up his motivations. And he's going to be the main focus of the movie. Sonic and his friends are going to have to team up and work together to stop him. Things are going to go bad. He's going to bring out the worst in Sonic and reveal Sonic's dark side. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be mature. It's going to be awesome. Then the other half were like, well, we could do that, but I think instead, Shadow should hardly be in the movie at all, and instead we should have a bunch of fart jokes. We should repeat the same jokes from the second film, except multiple times here, again, making them all running gags. We should of course have references to other films, fourth wall breaks, because that was popular 10 years ago in the Deadpool films, and we're down with the kids, so we can't not do it. We can talk about Pokemon, we can reference TikTok and all the other pop culture trends. We can have a scene where Jim Carrey is spanking himself with a giant robot hand, because that's what Sonic fans want to see. We can have more dance scenes, more random weeb humor, Reddit humor, all the same human characters that nobody cared about in the first two, that were one note joke characters in the first film, but were given more screen time in the sequel for some reason. Let's bring them all back. Let's completely forget about Shadow midway through the film and write a scene where him and the idiot latte guy sit around eating guacamole while the interesting stuff happens off screen. I am not joking, by the way, that happens in this film. I mean, we can give Shadow a gun and a motorcycle for one scene just so that we can put it in the trailer and pretend he's the main focus of the movie or even a main part of the movie, but let's never do that again anywhere in the film. We can have two Robotniks for twice the cringe and still find time to add a bunch of pointless subplots that detract from the main focus of the film. We can remove all the great action scenes from the second film and instead just have a bunch of boring, neutered, inconsequential CGI crap filled with forced humor. Oh, and more importantly, make this movie as childish and as immature as possible, despite the trailer clearly implying that it's a dark, edgy, serious movie, clearly implying otherwise. You know what, guys? This movie is so mediocre that it doesn't even warrant a review. This movie is like a cock tease. It's like there was a good movie in there somewhere, but you just weren't allowed to see it. The first 40 minutes were excellent. You had Shadow breaking out of jail, Gunn assembling Sonic team to try to capture him, and when the movie started to go off the rails a bit, I was so disappointed that I actually started to write my own plot in my head, and what I came up with was actually better and more in the spirit of what it seemed like the movie's trailers and marketing were going for. And it would have been totally consistent with the themes and character development of the first two movies. My idea was mature, Shadow hunting down the people who wronged him, looking for revenge, since he has no purpose in life aside from that, and no sense of personal identity. Darkness and anger were all he had left. Sonic trying to reason with him, offering him a friend and a family who understands him, but unfortunately failing to convince him, leading to someone close to him either dying or being injured, leading Sonic on his own hunt for revenge, chasing down Shadow, culminating in a fierce rivalry between the two, allowing them to be played off against each other by Robotnik, who had his own agenda. Now, this movie had snippets of that idea, but the way they were all executed is so lame. And more importantly, it makes no sense. This movie will introduce things, and it's hard to really describe it without giving away too many spoilers. But suffice it to say, a lot of it just doesn't make sense. One thing I will reveal, like it even matters, there's two Robotniks in this movie, both of them played by Jim Carrey. Yeah, it's one of those movies. And when I saw that, I thought it was going to be like a time travel plot. Robotnik from the future coming back and teaming up with his past self, like in Sonic Generations. Like he had a plan that was so evil and diabolical and so complex that it would take two evil geniuses to figure it out rather than one. That would have been kind of funny, in my opinion, and it would make sense given what we learned about Robotnik in the previous movies. Like the only person smart enough to help him with his plan is himself, that kind of thing. But no, it's his granddad. And I'm like, what? This brings up so many more questions. And every scene they have together is so cringe and just so awkward. Jim Carrey gets way too much screen time here, and it's just awful. His performance made me uncomfortable. I almost don't know how to describe how awkward and uncomfortable these scenes were to watch. It's just awful. They also conflict with Shadow's character motivations in the movie and completely muddle the waters. You know what, guys? I don't care. I'm not even going to try to justify or dignify this movie. This is a movie for 5-year-olds. It's a movie for babies. It's the most insulting, patronizing piece of crap I have watched in a long time. And it stands as a reminder of how we're just not allowed to have anything good anymore, are we? How do you take Shadow the Hedgehog, Edgy the Hedgy himself, and mess that up? This movie, it made me feel really bad, like the more I thought about it on the way home. And it's like, again, this is a movie for children. This is so immature. It's so oh man, I feel ripped off. I'm not even bothering reviewing this movie or wasting any more time on it. I give Sonic the Hedgehog 3 a 4 out of 10. Is it a bad movie? Well, I would prefer it if it was just flat out bad, because then I'd just move on and watch something else. Because there was a good movie in there somewhere. It's like being forced to look at it through glass but not being able to actually touch it. My boy Shadow deserved so much better. 4 out of 10, mediocre at best. Man, I'm very disappointed. And I actually feel kind of depressed after watching this. Sorry, but that's all I've got to say for now. There was a lot I was going to go through in this video. I was going to go over a lot of aspects of the film, things that disappointed me, things that I would have done differently, but I just don't have the heart to do it. Thanks for watching, guys. God bless.